But let's get into our first topic of conversation, which is just possibly the best draft slop we could ever get, which is this draft cycle. I think that the people are kind of fighting for their lives because, as we've discussed time and time again, it's the first draft that we haven't had consensus guys at the top that are, usually it's big college stars, or in last year's case, it was Victor Wembanyama at the top of the draft that kind of stole all of the headlines. And because of that, we're getting some of the most psychotic news coming out possible about LeBron James' son, Bronny James, who worked out this past week for the Suns and the Lakers, or is going to work out for the Suns and the Lakers this week, and apparently is turning down workouts with other teams.
It's so sick.
Which is wild considering, I mean, a month ago, he was projected to go undrafted. Obviously, he had some serious health issues his first year at USC and was never really able to get his footing right as a freshman. Coming into even before that, he was projected to be a second-round pick as it is if he were to be a one and done. He was a guy that a lot of people thought should have stayed for multiple years in college. Obviously, being LeBron's son, you get some benefits that other prospects do not when you're going into the draft. So
that's not fair, by the way. That's not how America works. You shouldn't get a hand up just because of who your dad is.
Totally agree.
Your parents are rich. That's not the American way.
No, you gotta pull yourself up by your bootstraps and work really hard, and you will get to the top.
Wait, you think Bill Gates just like got a loan from his parents? Jeff Bezos just got a loan from their parents? You think Elon Musk was given money to start his company by his parents? No, they all had to work their ass off for their jobs. So it's not fair that Bronny James might get a first-round pick just because of this. It would be very funny for the Phoenix Suns to select Bronny James with their first-round pick. Like, perfect cherry on top to everything that has happened since Matt Ishbia has taken over. Like,
I think that Matt Ishbia has main character syndrome. That's the only thing, and he wants us to talk about him every week on the podcast. That's the only thing that I can gather from all of this is that Ishbia is obsessed with being the topic of conversation. I mean, it makes sense, the fact that him and Bill get along so well.
Yes, yes. It's the fucking tweet. Think of the messiest bitch you know. It's a man, isn't it? Yeah.
Matt Ishbia.
Matt Ishbia, yeah. That's him.
So we also...
Dan Gilbert, right. You do not, under any circumstances, have to hand it to Dan Gilbert. However...
Oh, I didn't even think of that. Okay, look. The Dan Gilbert factor of all this too, getting back at Gilbert by taking LeBron's son, and
I didn't even think about that. He wants to get in good with LeBron. That's probably what it is.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh man, that's so funny.
He's trying to ruin Gilbert's life from the inside. He's trying to get in and smear his name to LeBron, who's the only reason that we would ever talk about Dan Gilbert on the podcast anyway. But I do just want to point out here that we've talked about it with the Suns before. They don't have a scouting department. So not great when you have a first round pick. We made jokes about it before when they traded for Kevin Durant, and even went further with that with the Bradley Beal trade. It was like, well, if you don't have a scouting department anyway, you might as well trade everything that you have in terms of draft picks in order to try to maximize your talent. And they still have two draft picks, including one in this first round of this draft.
That's like so insane to me. Like, you could there are like guys who are pretty good scouts, like on Twitter. Like, you know what I'm saying? They're not like, I'm sure that, you'd get made fun of a little bit, but like those guys would come work for you for $60,000 a year, so $80,000 a year.
So Sam's saying scam everyone who is on draft Twitter is what you're trying to get at here.
I'm just saying that it's a pretty it's a market where there's a lot of people are like very desperate, so there's no reason to there's absolutely no reason to not be paying people to run your scouting department.
No, I totally agree that we should exploit as much labor as possible from the
Well, no.
I know
Here's
I know what you're
saying.
saying. Yes.
No.
The market is not like you have to pay you. What you're trying to say is like it doesn't cost millions of dollars to have a scouting department. It's a cheap thing.
Right. Well, you could use the millions of dollars because what you need like a manager to manage the scouts. So you like pay the scouts. I said $80,000. Let's say like $40,000 a year, and then you have above them you have like a manager that you pay like $2 million. So like someone like let's say like a 34-year-old guy who's got like a background in podcasting and comms. Someone like that with a mustache. Someone like me, just for example, you pay him $2 million. And then I manage everything, which is a very important role.
Especially on a team like the Suns, who already have their stars in place. And the Sam Sheehan drafting strategy is only draft role players. So if that is the case, you'd be the perfect guy for the Suns' head of scouting. Honestly, we should get Ishby on the phone right now and have him hire you because I think that would be a perfect marriage. What is the 22nd pick in this draft? Yeah. Forget Bronny James. We could find a real role player there. Deron Holmes. Yeah. There's going to be
Carter might slide there, maybe.
There you go. Maybe Devin Carter. Maybe. I guess they don't really need guards, so Bub Carrington's out of place there. But there's someone you could find, I'm sure, that would slot in a lot nicer than Bronny James and LeBron James on a minimum contract.
Yeah, exactly. Look. Am I going to stay up to watch any of the games that I need to watch as a scouting director to know these things? No, but I can do the hard work and research myself, opening up Tankathon, clicking on the player profiles and seeing which one of them has the most green pluses. That's the best way to scout. Yeah. So this is the science that I could bring. Matt,
you're doing a bit, but I'm fairly certain this is exactly how the Suns scouted for the 2019 and 2020 draft when they last had a first round pick. And honestly, maybe even last year, because in the 2019 draft, they took Cam Johnson, who had all of the positive green flags in terms of production, except for he was older, but they didn't care about that because they were trying to win. And then in 2020, they took Jalen Smith, who was also a hyper-productive, bigger guy in college that obviously didn't work out for them. The only issue is that they took him one spot ahead of Tyrese Halliburton, who would have been perfect for them and also was hyper-productive and analytically one of the best players that we've ever seen coming out of college. If it's a 50-50 shot, they picked the wrong guy in that circumstance. But last year, they did have a second-round pick. And they took Toumani Camara, who they ended up throwing into the DeAndre Ayton trade, but he turned out to be one of the best guys selected in that second round. It's like him and Gigi Jackson in terms of the guys that were selected in the second round last year. And Trace Jackson Davis. But I just want to point out here the fact that this is the Suns are going into this draft and considering drafting Bronny James. I'm not even sure I believe it, to be honest with you. Someone did say to us that it's possible that because they think that Bronny might not be fully ready for the NBA right now, that he's only working out with teams that aren't going to leak to the media. Like, this guy is not, don't draft him. Or he's just not ready. Because the Lakers obviously aren't going to do that. They don't want to upset LeBron. And then James Jones has a long relationship with LeBron. And as we know, there is this absurd concept out there that LeBron could take a veteran's minimum to join the. He is a free agent.
It would be. I mean, if he did that, it would be very funny. Let me just put it that way. That would change how I feel about the Suns if they got an All NBA player on a.
I think we've done 4 podcasts making fun of the Suns and how fucked they are, and if they were able to acquire the greatest player of all time on a minimum, I would feel a little bit better about this.
Yeah, I was going to say, I still probably wouldn't pick them in the West, but they're in the mix now.
I mean, look, I think they have some issues, but a starting 5, even if I'm a little bit, lower on the trio that they have currently, Beal, Booker, Durant, LeBron, Nurkic, that's a pretty good starting 5.
Pretty good. It's pretty good. Did you get Grayson Allen off the bench?
Could you imagine doing all that and then they lose in the play-in?
which is totally possible because Beal, Durant, and LeBron are all missing 30+ games. Like,
Coach Bud factor, though. I think Coach Bud with that roster would be. It's possible they could win 65 games in the regular season and lose in the first round.
That's so true. Oh my god. Run into Zion, the only Zion season where he's healthy, and the playoffs, and he just destroys them.
But like this concept that LeBron would ever take a vet minimum is just so absurd. We get it every single offseason where it's like Kyrie might take the MLE to join the Lakers. And now it's LeBron might take the vet minimum. First off, the CBA, the players union, they would fucking ruin LeBron James if he decided to take a veteran's minimum. Do you remember what happened last time when LeBron James took less than the max when he joined Miami so that they could sign everyone? The union was like, you cannot do this. And ever since he's taken only full max deals and max extensions because it's just, if one of the greatest players that's ever played the game is taking a minimum, you're really fucking over the rest of the players in terms of what, when they go to the table to negotiate these contracts.
Yeah. That's like been the thing. Like, I think there is a little bit of tension between the best players in the NBA because of the concept of player maximums, and the, kind of the idea of creating like a healthy middle class, because if player maximums didn't exist and there was still a salary cap, then teams there would be like, I don't know, 120 max players, and then everybody else would have veterans minimums.
Sure.
Like in the NBA.
Wemby would get $150 million if he were to hit free agency.
Yeah, exactly. So, they kind of need to do this to that's the point of the union, is to kind of spread some of this around, and everyone ends up still fine and dandy. But I do think that there is a little bit of chafing from the best players under this because, they are the best players, and they, remember they made a lot of this when that was happening. You heard that a lot in like 2010, like when he went to the Heat, where it was like, well, LeBron James is actually the best deal in the NBA, even though he's like makes a max player. So he's a
team first guy, LeBron James. Yeah. I'm sure that there were no back channels that Pat Riley set up to get LeBron his fucking money. But
I got distracted by Piss calling me NBA natalist secret in the comments for talking about the healthy middle class.
Ridiculous.
Anyway, but yeah, it won't happen. That's not it. LeBron will be taking another maximum. Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I highly doubt LeBron is going to be leaving the Lakers in the first place. But let's just talk about the idea of Bronny being a first round pick, because right now, by the way, I do just want to throw this out there. If LeBron James was ever considering leaving the Lakers and a team with the first round pick found this out, are you telling me Daryl Morey wouldn't just take him at pick 16?
No, I think he would.
Obviously. And what's the difference between the Sixers and the Suns? The Sixers can offer a full max for LeBron, which, if this were ever even a remote possibility, he would take him at 16 and he would say, whatever, this draft sucks. I don't care. I don't care about wasting it. First, we're getting LeBron James. Yeah. Even if it's on a max contract, they can offer that in a way that the Suns can't, in a way that, the only teams that really can are like the Lakers, the Magic, the Spurs, and the Sixers, of teams that are, relatively competitive that could offer him that. Unless Bronny wants to go to Detroit with the 5th pick and team up with Cade Cunningham and get a max contract for LeBron there. But the reason I bring this up is because the idea that Bronny, even in a weak draft, is a first round pick to me, it would just be an insane way. The Lakers technically will probably have a pick ahead of the Suns. So it's possible that all of this information is leaking so that the Lakers secure Bronny, like they take him there so that the Suns can't possibly get him at 22 when they pick. because the Lakers are probably going to have that pick that I'm assuming that the Pelicans will defer to next year, which is a few spots ahead of the Suns pick. But a year, and this kind of goes back to my whole thing about the Lakers being in the palm of LeBron's hand. Why are you still doing this? like when LeBron was at his peak, it was always worth it to do whatever LeBron wanted because you were going to be one of the best teams in the NBA. You would have a shot at winning the finals, and you would probably get to the finals at a minimum. But now it's like you're in the play-in every year. You might not even make the playoffs in the West next year, and you just spent a pick on last year. We talked about during the draft. I mean, one of the worst picks of the whole draft, taking Hood Schifino ahead of all the guys that went right after him, Cam Whitmore, Podzimski, Jaquez, all those guys. You can't blow back-to-back first-round picks in order to appease LeBron and keep this thing continuing to go, because it just doesn't make any fucking sense from a team-building perspective.
Well, I mean, it like hasn't. They're already in a spot where they're gonna kind of have to pay the piper a little bit here. You know, like they still owe some Anthony Davis stuff. They still owe, you know, all of their young guys are kind of out the door. Some of the contracts they have on the books right now are a direct result of trying to compete right now. For example, like Rui Hachimura, like, you know, he probably got a little more money than he might normally have otherwise gotten in this market because Lakers needed him. He was the throw-in in, you know, the Russ trade that they had, and they needed bodies.
Oh, he wasn't.
Or no, sorry, the second round picks. Yeah, but they traded the second round picks. Like capital has gone into maintaining this LeBron James team. So there is
Jared Vanderbilt's the one that they got for Russ that they extended, and they probably paid a little bit too. I mean, they paid him over the full MLE. They paid him like $13 million a year.
Yeah, and he's just, you know, he might not even be a rotation player at this point. So I mean, obviously they should trade LeBron. Like, obviously they should have traded LeBron. If LeBron were to leave, they obviously should trade Anthony Davis. They're not going to do either of those things, though, because they are dead set on competing and trying to, like, maximize their cap space. And I think it's way more likely that they're going to spend 3 first-round picks on DeJounte Murray or Trae Young or, you know, whatever, player X that might be able to help them. So I don't know. I'm interested. I just think that obviously LeBron has them over a barrel, but it just, I'm done. The Lakers acting logical, I guess, is not something that I consider like a prerequisite for talking about the Lakers, you know?
But it's also like, what's the downside here? You go to him and you say, we're not drafting your son, who, if he was not your son, would not be a first round pick. Let's just be real.
I don't think he'd be drafted if he was LeBron's son. Like,
and look, it's not to say that there aren't guys who were underwhelming and didn't produce their first year of college that have gone on to be fine NBA players. Do you want to know who those players are? Gigi Jackson, okay, a huge athletic freak. Jaden McDaniels, a huge athletic freak. Zach LaVine, a pretty big, skilled, athletic freak. Like, Bronny, when we were talking about him as a prospect in general, the idea behind him was that he could be a defensive off-ball guard who had good tools and had a good shot and could become a 3-and-D type guard in a mold of a DeAnthony Melton. You know, some of the comps he's gotten are like maybe a diet Marcus Smart or Davion Mitchell or whoever. But the reality is that all of the guys who have kind of hit it out of the park in terms of not producing at a high level in college and then going on to be good NBA players are almost always bigger guys that are very athletic and kind of pop on tape when you watch them, or at least are guys that are, you know, have the tools to become very good NBA players and maybe went to a bad situation or underperformed because of the role they were in. Like, Bronny just didn't even play that much. And not only did he not play that much, he wasn't productive in those minutes. And if he were not LeBron's son. He would have to go back to college, obviously, and perform and produce. And I think that there is a world where he could be a bench player, and, you know, maybe he gets drafted to the right team and it works out for him in that capacity. But once again, even in a draft like this, you can't use a first round pick on that, because if you're the Lakers, like I said, you can't waste the asset. And then also on top of that, like, go to LeBron and be like, okay, if he gets drafted by the Suns, you're not going to the Suns, dude. Like, you don't have leverage. I actually have no problem with them using a second round pick on him, to be clear, because I actually think the odds of a second round pick becoming an NBA player in any draft are so low. I mean, it's like every second round on average has like 4 guys that are like legit rotation players, and usually it's like 1 guy that actually matters. So, like, for example, both of these teams have second round picks. I wouldn't care if they took him in the second round. Who gives a shit at that point? Like, even if you take him in the second round and you give him a real contract with, you know, for like 3 or 4 years and see if you can develop him into something, then sure. But to use a first round pick on him, the Lakers would be insane to do that. The Suns would be insane to do that. And I can't believe that it's even a thought that teams are having, especially if LeBron is not attached to whatever's happening here, which is highly likely.
Yeah, exactly. It is a very old school media story. You know what I'm saying? I feel like this is like very Bush era Sports Center. you know what I'm saying? Like
watching Marcus Jordan's game, a game against Eric Gordon, where he absolutely tears him apart in high school.
Yeah. I feel like this is. It's not quite as circusy, but like kind of reminds me of like when Lonzo's dad was like always on like shows like back in the day. Yeah, like it's kind of a throwback to old ESPN where it's like who fucking cares? Like where it's just kind of like wish casting and making up something that's like going to happen. Like, remember we all had to pretend like LiAngelo was going to be like an NBA player, and everyone knew that he wasn't going to be. Like,
wait, you're telling me the guy who said that Lonzo is better than Steph Curry and also he could beat Michael Jordan one-on-one was maybe not being honest about his other son?
Yeah, no, it's and it's very weird how they all have his tried to launch a merch company off the back of it, and might have damaged his son's bones beyond repair having them play in
both of them.
Yeah.
Well, all 3, we just wouldn't know about LiAngelo because he's just not a factor in the NBA. But this is actually a great question. How high would Bronny go if LeBron came out and said, I guarantee to sign for a minimum with any team who drafts my son?
I think 1.
I think that the Hawks would take him.
Yeah. I think 1 if that was the case. So it's like more of a gamble because I think in like a normaler draft, it'd be like 3 or 4. You know what I'm saying? Like, but in this draft where it's like you're talking about like Sar and Topic and these guys who like don't have they have a chance, but they don't have a great chance to be like all-stars or anything like that. Like, I think it would definitely be worth it at that point to get like 3 effective years of, 2 to 3 effective years of LeBron James on a veteran's minimum. So
that actually would be amazing because then the team would be Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, Jalen Johnson, LeBron James, Clint Capela's washed, but who cares at that point? Like, that's all of a sudden a very interesting team. Like, you're like, so I'm just putting this out there. Getting LeBron James on a veteran's minimum is a bit of a cheat code.
Yeah. I think it would help a lot of teams.
Getting one of the 10 best players in the NBA who even after getting eliminated in the first round was still incredible in the playoffs. I would say it's a pretty good thing to have him for nothing.
Do you think if he went to Detroit on the minimum that they would make the playoffs in the East?
I mean, how many games does he play?
A LeBron amount, like 60 or something like that. Like, so
I think the answer is still no.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
They might make the play-in.
The spacing is like too bad though. Like LeBron and Cade kind of play the same way, albeit at very wildly different levels of effectiveness. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So like I'm not sure how well that would work.
I can't believe we would have to have a think piece about does LeBron James fit with Cade Cunningham?
You'd have draft Twitter people being like, "You can't bring in LeBron to stunt Cade's development." Just getting furious that they're ruining Cade. God, Cade is in such a horrible situation. They put LeBron James next to him. This sucks.
He is truly the main character of draft Twitter.
No, that'd be good. So anyway, yeah, let's go.
So I'm trying to think of what would be the Pistons starters if they just added LeBron for no. I mean, it's hard for me to say. Are they adding him on a veterans minimum? Or are they adding him? Oh, well then yes, because they could just go sign other players. They have cap space.
Yeah, well, who are they signing? Like Clay or?
I mean, if you get LeBron, like you getting Clay,
Malik Monk or Clay, like I think will probably be the KCP. There we go. Like it's a little bit. LeBron, open yourself up to this. Like I don't know. Like you've done battle. You've done battle with Dan Gilbert before, and now you face the final boss of NBA owners in Tom Gores.
Let's go.
Saving his franchise. So let's go.
I actually love this idea. LeBron #LeBron to Detroit. Yeah, let's get it done. He's saving the franchise. Trajan Langdon, get on the phone immediately with Rich Paul.
Let's go. Imagine if they just drafted Bronny 5th overall and everyone was like, "What?" And then it came out that he's on his way.
Okay, what would be worse? Them drafting Bronny 5th overall and getting LeBron, but they have to pay him a full max. They can't get him on the minimums.
Okay, yeah.
Or I'm just asking you specifically because I know how you feel about this. Mm-hmm. Or they draft Dalton Connect.
I'd much rather have LeBron and Bronny than Dalton Connect. Like I'm not. Dalton Connect's better than Bronny, but like, how much?
I'm trying to think who's the worst, because I guess there really isn't a prospect in this draft that you could say, like, if Topic fell there and they were like, we're still taking Bronny to get 2 years of LeBron. I mean, I obviously wouldn't blame them. Like, I would be like, yeah, you're gonna sell out for fucking. That's my thing. Is like, I actually think, because we keep talking from like a logical team building. LeBron kind of has a stranglehold on the Lakers right now, but I keep forgetting that they're just kind of cheap.
Yeah.
And like I think that they kind of, the Lakers and the Heat skirt under the cheap team thing because they're in a big market and they have all these media people behind them and they're always good. Like they're always, whether they're in the playoff mix or they're contending or whatever, they're always like one of the better performing teams in the NBA. So teams or people kind of miss the fact that both of these teams are cheap. And the reason I bring this up is because yes, the Lakers sell out every game, no matter what, who they put in there. But the ticket prices when you have LeBron James on your team, and every single night you can be like, we're going to see LeBron and AD play, are a little bit different than like it's the Austin Reeves show.
Yeah, exactly.
like the sickos could talk themselves into going to see Austin Reeves and Rui Hashimura and whoever. But if you want the casuals to come in, the ones who actually spend money, then you gotta get a big marquee name in there. So that's really the reason why they're bending over and doing whatever LeBron wants, because he'll sell out huge ticket numbers for every single game.
Shout out to Dre Iso, who says the Lakers are the ultimate small business tyrants.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely true. They fucking applied for a PPP loan during COVID. I don't people forget that, but that's the level of they're like the world's largest Sea-Doo dealership. Essentially, like the level they're operating at. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. I don't think LeBron's going anywhere. I think this is all much ado about nothing, but it is funny to talk about. So
yeah. No, I totally agree. Yeah. So let's get into something a little bit less important personally to me. Doesn't mean anything. I'm actually not mad. Don't put it in the newspaper. I was mad. The Celtics won the Eastern Conference the other night. Congratulations, I guess. Whatever. They completed the second most competitive sweep that we've ever seen over the Indiana Pacers. Every single game was close except for game 2. And my question for you is, would you like to sign the Drew Holiday apology letter?
I mean, Drew has been so good in these second rounds. He has absolutely dominated.
Third round.
well, second and third round. He was really good last season. He has dominated Andrew Nebhart. He has TJ McConnell has had no idea what to do. I think, Darius Garland wasn't able to guard him, which was unreal. And, I think that, I think that Drew has been extremely good. And I'm sure that he'll continue to be awesome against Luka Doncic and Drew Holiday. And I'm sure I won't get mad at him at all in that series. And I'd love to sign that apology letter. There's no way.
Kyrie Irving?
Kyrie, what did I say?
You said Drew Holiday.
Well, Drew Holiday.
He is in a lifelong battle with
Drew Holiday. That's what I'm saying. That is his number one enemy. Is Drew Holiday.
There was a little bit of a Freudian slip there.
Yeah. I mean, according to the NBA account that follows, that tracks follows and who's following what, Drew Holiday was celebrating, kind of letting loose a little bit. Gave himself a little, free. Just checking some things out after his victory. So I thought he was great. And I think he deserves to treat himself like that. And
Drew supports laborers.
Yeah, exactly. So
okay,
we will see. We'll see what happens if I will get down on my hands and knees and beg him for forgiveness if he locks down Luka next round. However, I have a sneaking suspicion that won't happen, and that I'm going to have some tweets involved about what I think of Drew Holiday on Luka Doncic. So,
okay. So first off, if it's, let's say, so you're going to go out on a limb here and say you think that the Wolves don't have a chance to come back from down 0-3. You think it's almost certainly going to be the Mavs? It's 3-1 now. I mean, it's not. We just saw last year they took them to Game 7.
I got owned though. I thought for sure the Wolves were going to come back. I just don't think the Wolves. I thought the Wolves kind of got unlucky in those first two games, but as the series has gone along, I mean, whenever Lively comes back, I think this is kind of over. Like the fact that it's still been close with Lively out is a little alarming to me. Cat can always pull his thumb out of his ass, and that changes things because he's been like
last night,
awful, and that's how they were able to win last night. But I don't know. I just don't. I'm skeptical of that happening at this point. And even if the Wolves were to get the momentum back at home in Game 5, I think it's pretty possible that the Wolves win Game 5. But I just don't see. Even if Dallas were to blow Game 6 at that point, I feel like it would be destined for what happened to the Celtics last year to happen to the Wolves, where you force the 3-game. You come back from down 3-0 to force Game 7 and then lose the Game 7.
Yeah, they're really leaning into this bit of the Celtics comparison that we've been making for the Wolves over the last. We compared them to the 2022 Celtics, but they are now leaning into their 2023 Celtics by winning Game 7 over an MVP level center, and then turning around and losing the first 3 games of the next series to a lower seed. It's incredible that they're just so dedicated to this Celtics 2022-2023 bit that they are like, we are locked in. I think the Wolves have a chance to definitely push this thing to 6. I know Luka didn't have his greatest game last night. They did make the adjustment. They switched McDaniels onto Kyrie, and he mostly locked him up in that game. And I think eventually you are going to probably just end up seeing the Mavericks. I love that Karl Anthony Towns is such a funny player to me because he's so incredibly talented. And I mean, we just joked about Drew being his own worst enemy. There's no player in the NBA that is their own worst enemy more than Karl Anthony Towns. Has his best game shooting wise and scoring wise of the series by a wide margin. One of his best playoff games in general. And he ends up fouling out on the dumbest fucking fouls possible down the stretch of the game, despite the fact that he performed at the level that he did. So yeah, the Wolves have a chance to get back in this series, but until we see a team win 4 straight after losing the first 3, I just don't know if it's really possible. Like it's everything has to go perfect. I mean, it's hard enough to come back down from 0-2 let alone 0-3. I think that it will probably end up going 6. I think they'll probably win the next game, and then Dallas will clinch game 6. But did you see the tweet from the Mavs fan who was like, they're playing 7-dimensional chess, and they lost the game on purpose so that Luka doesn't get out of shape in the week off between the conference finals and the finals?
That's a good. I mean, hey, that's a good idea. Like, you've got to keep Luka out there getting his cardio.
Yeah,
it's the only way. Yeah, you can't have Luka disappearing into the hookah bars for a week and a half and coming out the other side for the finals. That's no good. So
yeah, so that is that's I was gonna say the hookah bars, the sweet tea. They're keeping him away from the sweet treats and potentially keeping him in shape in these games, because Draymond talked about it last night during the broadcast. He was like, it is hard not to, like, he's like, the first game, let's just say this series goes 6. Mm-hmm. And the Mavericks come in against the Celtics in game 1 after having had, so tomorrow night is game 5, game 6 would be on Saturday. The difference in breaks there is like 11 days versus 5 days. Draymond was basically saying that, like, there is a bit of, if you're the team that sweeps them trying to stay in rhythm, that first game back is really hard when you've sat for 11 days. That's when, if the Wolves or the Mavs, if this series goes long, or if the Mavs finish this series in 6, they do have a little bit of an advantage in terms of not having quite as much rest time in between games. But obviously you'd rather just get this fucking out of the way. Like, I'm sure if you ask the Mavs, they would be like, yeah, we would prefer just to win the fucking series like the Celtics did, and easily get out of there so that we don't risk having any more injuries, because we just saw what happened with Lively, and like, Lively's such an important part of their team that we saw it on display last night where they have to play Dwight Powell. And they immediately were like, this isn't working. Let's throw Maxi Kleber out there for the first time in a month and see if that's any better. So I don't know. I kind of just am like, I've been waiting for a moment to be like, because we talked about this, like, I think last year the Nuggets had many moments where you were just like, yeah, they're winning the championship.
Yeah.
And it felt like none of these teams did until game 3 of the Celtics Pacers series for me, where even though, look, I know Halliburton's out, the Pacers are probably not your normal ECF level team, but the whole time I'm like, there's no way the Celtics are winning this game. And then they just win the game. And then the same exact thing happens in game 4 and they just win the game. And I was like, I just don't think that I think that they were clearly the best team in the regular season. I think that they've had the easiest path, as we've discussed, the benefit of that when you get deeper into the playing like a real team in the finals and you're not exhausted and injured and beaten up. And then also on top of that, they didn't even have Porzingis and they lost 2 games in the East. Even if they had a Mickey Mouse easy path, I just kind of think that this is the Celtics year and everything is broken in their favor, and they didn't even really need that to happen. It's similar to the Nuggets thing last year where, like, they probably didn't need all these things to break in their favor. They did anyway, and now it kind of seems, I don't want to say it's inevitable, because if Luka gets there, Luka's Luka, and you can't ever count out a Luka team. But the way that the Celtics performed in the second half of the last 2 games, specifically in the fourth quarter, it feels like they've solved some of their previous issues that they've had in the playoffs.
If Porzingis doesn't come back in the finals, I'm going to be the Joker. If Marcus Smart died for no reason, it's gonna make me sad.
I mean, Drew's still been pretty good. It's basically just Drew versus Smart at that point.
Yeah, but we didn't trade. I mean, I guess we traded one of the first round picks we got from Smart, but we could have just traded another first round pick. I think Joe Cronin still would have said yes. So
you just can't move on.
No. It should have been Malcolm Brogdon. Should have been Malcolm Brogdon in the trade.
You're such a brat.
Yeah, should have been Malcolm Brogdon in the trade, and that it would have been fine. It would have been fine. We would have had fewer first round picks, but that's fine. If I had to send one out instead. So.
You're unbelievable. But I don't know. I know you don't want to say it because you don't want to jinx it, but I'm kind of just to the point where I think that it's the Celtics' title to lose, and the only way I can see them losing this is if Luka just is like, I'm not losing, which, I mean, is totally possible, sure, but like, I don't know. The more like the Mavs are a good team. But like I talked about this yesterday, I'm like, they're just not, and maybe it's just because I can't wrap my brain around a team adding 2 key rotation players at the deadline. Another one of their starters in Derrick Jones Jr. is a veterans minimum guy that's playing his first year with the team.
Yeah.
Another one of their most important players is Derek Lively, who's a rookie. And then another one of their most important players is Kyrie, who has not played a full season with them until this year. Like they are the Celtics have had, even the Wolves have had multiple runs, or not runs, I shouldn't say, multiple playoff appearances with Karl Anthony Towns and like some McDaniel, some of this core.
Yeah.
The Celtics have had many playoff runs with the Jays.
And Al,
and Al Horford,
and
Derek White even now.
Yeah,
like I mean, like so, like
a few years,
the Mavs. If the Mavs win the finals, it's going to be. I don't want to say it's an outlier because they have Luka, and if you have one of the 4 best players, it's almost never an outlier. But it would be such an unordinary championship from terms of how they put this team together.
Yeah.
And how they just kind of won a championship out of the blue in a way that we're used to seeing teams kind of fail a few times and then get to that higher level and perform. And it just feels like the Celtics have kind of figured some things out. And both the Jays, I mean, I know they were playing against the Pacers defense, but both the Jays looked much better in those second halves and in those fourth quarters.
It feels like I genuinely like it started in the Cleveland series for me when everyone, like all the media people started saying, well, here we go. Like the Celtics are, when it was 1-1 and everyone was like, oh, the Celtics are frauds, like the classic Celtics. I was like, this isn't something they usually like say, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think there was kind of an effort to like interject like a little bit more drama into like what was pretty inevitable. I feel like even at the beginning of the playoffs, like once the Celtics side of the bracket was what it was, I think that it was pretty much over at that point. You had the Bucks, Pacers. By the way, how insane is it? There was a Knicks, Sixers, Bucks, Pacers side of the bracket, and the Pacers came out of it.
Well, that's the thing is that, and I want to get to the Pacers in a second. We'll do the eulogy for them. But the thing that is driving me a little bit insane, don't get me wrong, what the Pacers did is completely commendable. I respect the fact that they pushed in the chips to go get Siakam. I think it was a bold move. I think it paid off.
I thought they played really well, honestly, in the conference finals.
I respect the team. I'm not, but I do feel a little bit insane. Everyone's doing it with the Mavericks and the Pacers right now, where it's this complete like rewriting of history of like how, like for the Pacers especially, how they got there. Like they faced the Bucks without Giannis in the first round.
And Dame for a few games too.
And Dame missed a few games and had one of his best playoff games of all time in the first game of that series, which won the Bucks that game. And then the Knicks, who were just corpses by the time they got to the end. And now that the Pacers have made it there, and look, they have a nice young core. They have a lot to look forward to. But it just feels like every time a team makes a conference finals run like this, whether it's the Mavericks or the Pacers, these teams that kind of come out of nowhere, it's always, this is how you have to build your team. And it's like, what? Like they would have lost in the first round if Giannis was healthy. I'm like, don't get me wrong. I actually think that there might be some truth to how they've built, like nailing late first and second round picks, turning Sabonis into Halliburton, like like valuing the players that they valued in trades. Like I think they've built a nice team, but I also think that like this is more results than process, if anything.
Honestly, I think there's a pretty good chance that in like 3 years, Jarris Walker is their second or third best player, and he hasn't even played yet. So that they are really well set up. But like, it's such an insane thing to be like that. Oh, the reason that the Pacers are in the conference finals is because they pushed the chips in and got Siakam, and it's like, well, I'm sure that helped, but like in a normal playoff scenario, they're getting like either annihilated by the Bucks. Giannis runs the halfback dive a billion times, or if the Sixers got out of that Knicks series, I'm sorry, the Sixers were probably crushing the Pacers, like too. It probably looks pretty similar to how the Celtics series looked.
I kind of think the Knicks were just the better team too. I know the Pacers won that series, but like the Knicks had no. And look, that's part of Tibbs' team. We've talked about it before, but like.
Yeah,
they had a chance to go up 3-0 in that series, and no one has ever come back down from 3-0. The Pacers won game 3, good for them, but like I don't know. I feel like we talk about things on a results basis so often that we lose all of our like common sense when it comes to how we got there in the first place. Like I will say the Mavericks beat a legit Thunder team in the second round, so I'm willing to give them a little bit more, and they're up 3-1 on the Wolves right now. And also they have two of the best players in the Western Conference. So I'm willing to give them a little bit more leniency and credit when it comes to this because they're in the tougher conference.
They've beat genuine contenders every playoff step.
Well, the Clippers not without Kawhi, not really.
I guess
they were a good playoff team, but not like with Harden and PG still, but not quite like contender.
I guess Kawhi didn't play, but like I don't know. It is a pretty legit space, but I think it's going to come back. Even if I'll say it, I don't think the Mavericks are going to win because I really genuinely believe when you have a bunch of fucking hard series, it adds up. Like I think that this is the Celtics 2022 Warriors series. Like I think that they're just going to be fresher, more ready. They're getting guys healthy at the right time, and I think the longer that this Wolves series drags on, you got more and more. If they get another rotation player hurt, like if Derek Jones Jr. just like tweaks his hamstring and is out for like 2 weeks, that's catastrophic for their rotation. Like they're right on the edge of disaster by virtue of how shallow they are too. Like
I can't imagine missing a key player going into the finals.
Wouldn't it? I mean, it'd be bad. Honestly, they've kind of been fine without Porzingis. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know.
They're going to need Porzingis in a Maverick series, though. That's it. And here's why. Al Horford will be killed by Luka Doncic if he Al is fine as a backup center. He can play 4 a little bit, but defensively in that matchup, I just don't even know if he can. If he's starting, like, there's just no way.
Here's the thing. Porzingis is getting killed by Luka too. Getting killed by Luka is part of the equation.
Sure. I totally agree. But I also think that what Porzingis brings you in other elements, like if you're willing to give up that Luka Horford switch, he's going to kill you in that way. If you're running drop, he's going to kill you in that way. As we've seen there's no way to guard Luka. It's a team effort. There's no way to stop him in that offense. But I just think that if Horford is your starting center for 35-40 minutes a night against Luka, I mean, we even saw Harden do it a little bit last year against him in a much compromised state compared to this version of Luka Doncic, who's playing like one of the best players in the world.
Here's the thing. They have not seen the level of wings they're about to get in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And I think that is a definite weakness of this team. And I think they were very lucky to avoid Kawhi. And outside of that, they played Paul George was outside of Paul George was the next best wing that they played. Who's the next best wing that they played?
Jalen Williams, or unless you consider Anthony Edwards a wing. I mean, he's kind of a wing.
Yeah,
he's like a guard, but he's got like a wing build. I would say Anthony Edwards, and they've done a good job. I think that they've done better. The thing is that I think the Celtics, the reason why they win is just their starting 5, especially with Porzingis, is just unstoppable. But I think that if Porzingis is out, it levels the playing field a little bit more. I think that if Porzingis is out, all the advantage, the strength of this Celtics team when facing a real legit playoff team, which they have largely avoided so far to this point, is the fact that they have the best starting 5 in the NBA, one of the best starting 5s that we've ever seen. And the Mavericks being able to kind of, potentially even things out a little bit more if Porzingis doesn't play and Lively's healthy and all that stuff. I think it's a little bit more interesting, and I think that the Mavericks have a legit chance. But if Porzingis is healthy and fine, then I think it's kind of all moot. I think that the Celtics just have way more options. They have a way better, deeper two-way team, and they'll easily win.
I'm going to be interested to see. I think Porzingis not being back yet is a little alarming to me. I think he's going to be bad when he comes back for like at least 2 games. And if that's happening in like game 3, like when he comes back and he's going to have 2 games where he's not very effective, I don't know. We're talking about the series being half over at that point. Like,
how long has he been out at this point? Like, it's been like less than a month, right?
No, I think more than a month. I think it was April 27th. Yeah. So
yeah, it's a little over a month. I mean, even then, I wonder what the minutes look like for him when he comes back. Because to me, it's the game 1 thing is so huge. Because I mean, I know that you've joked before, the Celtics just need to steal 1 at home.
Yeah.
But game 1 and 2 are like, obviously in a 7-game series, they're very important. But if you're the Mavericks and you're able to get a Porzingis-less Celtics team, those 2 first games, as we've seen in this Wolves series, are so incredibly important to kind of take advantage of, because as the underdog, you need to fucking capitalize any fucking chance that you get. And if you can steal one of those 2 games on the road, it completely flips the series on its head. The Celtics win one of those games without Porzingis, or I'm sorry, if the Celtics win both those games without Porzingis, it's Jover. Like I don't see a way that they get Porzingis back in the series and they lose, especially after the first 2 games go in their favor. But it sounds like he's probably going to be ready for game 2, right? Isn't that the expectation?
Yeah. I mean, we're also talking about Jaylen Brown not playing the Miami Heat now. There's been 2 rounds of that, and it's been pretty good, and I expect that to continue. Like,
but Derek Jones Jr., he's a Miami Heat legend.
He was.
Did we not? Has he tapped into the devil magic? Is he on the phone with Spo getting tips? We were worried about the Timberwolves defense. We didn't even think about.
Can I say something?
Oh my God.
Can I make a prediction?
Derek Jones Jr. from Philadelphia. Let's go, King. Anyway, continue.
Can I make a prediction that if it is the Mavericks, that at some point we're gonna get a Russillo and Bill podcast after one of these games that the Celtics lose? Like, they're being pretty chummy with Kyrie. I don't know. Like, you're playing in the finals. Hey, what are you doing? What's that? What's the chest to balls hug you're giving him? That's bullshit. You gotta be. They don't have the dog in them. I liked Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday looked at him and said, no, I'm not going to hug you. And he left. And that's what we needed.
And these guys, I don't know if you know this, they have a history too. They played in the Olympics together. And I always say it's really important to play in the Olympics.
Yeah.
It gets you experience for these big finals games. Devin Booker didn't go to the Olympics that one year. It made me really mad.
And then totally flipped on him. Like, Bill is Bill doesn't understand that part of the thing with being a contrarian is you have to triple down even when you're being proved wrong in real time.
Even when you're getting owned, you can't give up.
For example,
you just
Drew Holiday. Yeah. I'm getting owned, but you just got to triple down. By the way, Jason says Missoula went on the radio and said Porzingis will be ready for game 1. So
okay, so we'll see.
True, we'll see.
That's pretty big. That's a big factor, I would say. Man, that's damn. God damn. I'm just coming to grips with the fact that the Celtics are going to win the title, and it sucks. But let's move on to let's do the Pacers eulogy, because they had a really good season. Obviously, they make it to the conference finals. They are the 6th seed. Halliburton obviously misses the end of this series, but Nembhard was fucking incredible in those last 2 games. I mean, Bill might have owned me. I don't know if you remember this, but a few years ago he put Nembhard on the trade value list because he had like a really good week where he had like a game winner against the Warriors and he had a really good game against the Lakers, and I made fun of him. I was like, Nembhard's already 23. Like, what are you talking about? But he was absolutely incredible as the lead guard. TJ McConnell had a great series as well.
Fraud Halliburton, system quarterback, system PG. Like,
I know I've always called Jason Tatum Brock Purdy. I think Will was the one who started that one, or might have been Will. I think that the real Brock Purdy might have been under our nose the whole time, and
Yeah.
Tyrese Haliburton, who also went to Iowa State and is friends with Brock Purdy.
Oh no! Oh no! I didn't realize
It does feel like, I mean, it was a plug-in. Look, it's not plug and play in terms of you could just throw anyone out there, but it is plug and play in terms of, because they value spacing so much and having shooting at all the positions and the ball movement between these guys, and they just play really well as a unit and as a team. Like, that's just something that I've kind of been saying. Like, I think they play better than their talent as a group.
Someone's always moving. That's something
I
noticed a lot. And that doesn't happen a lot in the NBA. Guys are always moving. I kept like being confused. Like, how did that guy get fucking open? Like, what are we doing? And it's just, there's a lot of off ball shit and a lot of action, and guys don't stand still, which is like a kind of a dumb guy, like analysis. That's like, typical, like your dad's alcoholic friend would say, like, well, you got to stop. You got to keep moving. You got to cut to the basket. You got to always have action off the ball. But like, the Pacers actually did that, So like, credit to Carlisle for getting that kind of buy-in from his guys to like make that happen. And they also shot the shit out of the ball, like really strong mid-range shooting in the series. They had leads in a lot of these games. Even though
leading in 3 of the 4 games with like 5 minutes left.
That's what I'm going to say. Even though it was a sweep, I feel like they acquitted themselves pretty well. Like, I think there's a pretty good chance that, I think in most scenarios the Celtics are only up 3-1 at this point. There's even some scenarios where it's going back to Boston tied 2-2. So
yeah, absolutely. 52 of 73 in the mid-range in this series is what Bontemps said on the Hoop Play. That's incredible. Wow.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was Siakam, a lot of that was Nembhard, a lot of that was TJ McConnell. They definitely built a team that is well equipped for playoff offense. We called them the Kings East coming into this year, and this is kind of how the Kings looked at times in the playoffs last year, where it was just like multiple ball handlers, multiple creators at every single position. Like I said, they really value that spacing from the 5 with Miles Turner, and they even went small a few times in this series. And yeah, I mean, look, credit to them for fighting. They looked really awesome. Where do they go from here, I guess, is the question. Because, like I said, I don't think you can plug and play anyone in that system. But, like, to have Haliburton, Nembhard, and TJ McConnell, who are all really good drivers with good touch that can score inside, all of them have decent three-point shots, except for TJ McConnell. And the one thing that I do think that is a little bit undersold with Haliburton's value is the fact that he is a guy that constantly, even if he isn't like your most like traditional star in a sense of like you hand him the ball and he runs 100 pick and rolls like Luka, he definitely can function more off the ball. He's a connective playmaker. He's always moving in the same way that you just said. And it kind of, it is an untraditional thing for a star to do, but that's something that he's bought into with that team. And I guess my question is, like, do they just run it back? Because my whole thing with the Mavericks has been like, even if they win the championship this year, I think they should be aggressive in trying to make moves to improve this team next year, because I think that they're in the West. So in the West, in order to you got to just constantly be trying to get better. Even if you're in the finals, win the championship, whatever it is, like, you shouldn't be passive and take steps back because you won or whatever. Whereas the Pacers obviously overachieved a little bit this season. But, like, what can they do to avoid this becoming the 2021 Hawks, basically? I know they're much more talented and better than the 2021 Hawks, but the difference is that the Eastern Conference and the league in general is better than it used to be, too. So do they just run this thing back and try to be more patient and see who really pops amongst the young guys? Or do they make a move or two this offseason to try to continue to improve the team?
Well, because the thing is that they're not even in like a Thunder position because they traded for Siakam. They now owe Siakam a max. So, Siakam's going to get, what is his max? I think it's
so much money.
Yeah.
Dude. I think it's like 5 years, 240.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think it's 50 million annual value. So like, that's going to put them at $157. So like, McDermott's coming off the books. I think TJ is non-guaranteed for next year at 9.3.
That'll get picked up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then, you've got Miles Turner going into the last year of his scam contract. Like he's getting paid $19 million next year. He's gonna want a real payday the year after that. So Obi Toppin's gonna be a free agent. As I alluded to earlier, you have Jarris Walker kind of waiting in the wings, and a lot of indications are that he's going to be pretty good, I think. So they're going to be like a tax-paying, tax-adjacent team like pretty quickly. The second Miles Turner comes off, they're definitely going to be a tax team, and that's like without even considering long-term what Nembhard and Mathurin are going to be. So I think like
yeah, they didn't have Mathurin for this run, which I'm not sure if it helped them or hurt them, to be honest. Because like Mathurin kind of is a weird fit with that team. Like he's talented for sure, but like when you watch the team move the ball like they do, cut off ball, do all that stuff, Mathurin is the kind of guy that I'm like, I don't really know if he's like a great fit with what they want to do. Like plenty of like Bruce Brown's good and he didn't fit with what they want to do. Like I think that he might be a guy that they could explore trading this offseason if they're unsure about his fit with the team and whether teams around the league value him just because he is a wing who can score.
Yeah. And and I think that is what they should be evaluating for in this like coming year. I think you would feel a lot better about just running it back and taking a year for evaluation. If you hadn't traded for Pascal Siakam, that kind of changes your timelines quite a bit. I guess maybe you could sign him this offseason and then like next offseason trade Pascal if it looks like you're really off of that, but you're not going to get as much value once Pascal Siakam has got
I think
$50 million a year.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it's $247 million over the 5 years.
Yeah, so it's pretty much exactly $50 million a year.
Yeah. 49.4 per.
Yeesh. So like, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I think they kind of have no choice but to run it back. I think that the areas to definitely improve is I think that they've got pick 36 in this draft, and I would definitely use that on a young big that's not Isaiah Jackson or Jalen Smith.
Isaiah Jackson had some moments in this, and he's still 22, 23. But yeah, I mean, in general, probably try to improve that backup big spot.
A little bit. I think you're okay if Obi Toppin walks, to be honest. Toppin was great in those playoffs, but I think that with Jarris Walker playing the way he is, I think it's as good a time as any to hand the baton off.
Well, that's the thing is that if they trust Jarris Walker, he can just plug directly into that Obi Toppin spot and they'll be fine. Yeah. If they're a little bit concerned about his fit and where I liked him as a prospect a lot. And I know that he didn't have many opportunities this year. I know he played really well in the G League. So I'm hoping that they give him a chance next year, especially considering like, I know Toppin was great at times in the Knicks series offensively. He was great at times offensively in the Celtics series. He's still a huge defensive liability. I mean, the Celtics targeted him time and time again down the stretch of that game that we saw the other night. Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum were just tearing him apart. And throughout the course of the playoffs, he really did struggle on defense. And I wonder if they look at that. He is an RFA. So he's an RFA. So if he ends up moving to another team, it would probably be an overpay.
Late breaking slop. The Wizards are hiring Brian Keefe as their head coach.
Oh shit!
So
this Keefe got me feeling like Brian. Go. He did a pretty good job after he took over. I don't know who he is, but he was. They were kind of scrappy down the stretch of the season. I don't know if you remember that, but he was good.
It's Travis the Travis Schlenk impact before he left. So.
Let's go. Can't wait until you trade Denny Avdia for nothing to the Celtics king.
God, please.
Wonder why you love him so much.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Too much playoff slop going on, or playoff talk going on, not enough slop. Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, if another team really likes Obi and gives him a bag, just let him walk. If you can get him on a decent tradable salary, sure. why not bring him back for like $8 million a year? He can still play well in the regular season and has his moments on offense in the playoffs. But I also think that people have pointed this out, but they're kind of set up well with their 2-max structure with Halliburton and Siakam. Plus, the reason why we really like the Siakam trade for them was because they had all these prospects in the pipeline: Nembhard, Shepherd, Mathurin, Walker. One of these guys, Isaiah Jackson, one of these guys was bound to pop, if not two. And then you're looking at a situation like what the Wolves have right now, where like you just have 7 really good players. And we know the importance of playing no shitters in the playoffs. And that's a situation that they could set themselves up for this upcoming offseason in terms of just kind of preserving that. If they choose to run this thing back, I'd be fine with it. I would look to try to get like some tradable salaries on the books so that you always have a chance to make another trade, whether it's with one of those prospects or with maybe whatever future draft picks that you still have left. To make another upgrade, because I don't think that you can lock yourself into this team without having a way to kind of, make improvements down the road if you do turn out to be the 2021 Hawks and have a regression year next year. I think that was always the issue with the Hawks, is that they locked themselves into a roster that was never going to be able to make it back. And you want to be able to give yourself that flexibility and in the meantime, they're still going to be a good competitive team. They'll be one of the 5 or 6 best teams in the East again next year. So they're set up really nicely. I mean, it's a fun young team. I'm excited to see where they go from here.
Yeah, I'm trying to like look it up real quick how many like firsts they have. I think they have their own first back starting. I think they're unencumbered pretty much after this year.
Yeah.
So like
2026 they owe for Siakam.
Oh, okay. Yeah. 2020.
They gave 3 firsts.
Okay.
2 firsts in this draft and then 1 in 2026.
Okay. So that's pretty good. Like they're pretty unencumbered if they want to, getting Siakam in the door, provided if he doesn't like fall off a cliff, they will be like pretty competitive for like the next like 5 years at the bare minimum. And I think that's fine in the East, like they'll be in the mix, and you can they're at an advantage where they have some intriguing young players. They have their own picks. They're in a position where if somebody becomes available, they can throw their hat in the ring. If somebody like really likes Mathurin or Nembhard, you can, add in a couple of picks, and just make, but the problem is they need the other salary. They're going to run into the problem where it's all maxes and guys on rookie scale contracts. It's going to make it hard to trade for those max guys without it being, something like that.
Yeah, I was going to say once they have these two maxes locked in, they're going to have to wait a little bit in terms of making a trade like the one that we're describing, because really with that second apron shit, it's just so hard to pull off. But the real strength of this front office is drafting at the end of the first round and the beginning of the second. I just want to point out, over the last few years, they got at the end of the first, they got Ben Shepherd last year, who turned out to be a rotation player for them this year. They got 2 years ago, they got Nembhard in the second round. Here are the picks around Nembhard. Okay, ready? Yeah. This is one of the craziest things. I always thought this draft fucking was like I look back on it now. I thought it was fine at the time, but I look back at it and I'm like, ew, man, these late first, early seconds. Like Nembhard was picked 31. Caleb Houston was picked 32. Christian Koloko was picked 33. Other Jalen Williams was picked 34. Max Christie was 35. And then you really don't even have any other rotation players for the rest of the draft except for Vince Williams Jr. and Jaden Hardy. That's like, to get that guy with the 32nd pick in the draft or whatever it was, 31st, incredible value there. Isaiah Jackson is a rotation pick for them. They got at the end of the first in 2021. Like, they always figure out ways to get those high value late first, early second guys. And that's what's going to be so important under this new CBA, is like, you have to nail those picks, because that's how you're going to be able to build a sustainable good team when you have max contracts on your book. And these new second April rules are just stupid and they fuck you over, basically.
I really hate the new CBA. Grant Williams is suffering. CJ, they're all suffering the consequences. It's divine punishment for what happened to what they allowed on their watch. So
right now, I just want to point out, Nihilus Buck sent me this earlier. He sent it into our group DM, but he said, "I fucking hate the CBA. The Bucks are presumed to go over the second apron, so that means we assume that they're just going to be over it, which means they cannot aggregate salaries right now, despite being under the second apron currently." So he basically said the Bucks couldn't even do a Bobby Portis for Grant Williams trade if they wanted to. They're going to have to shed salary to do that.
So obnoxious.
Which is so funny because Grant Williams, congrats, you have got yourself stuck in Charlotte.
Well, yeah,
would you rather be on the Bucks or the Hornets? Like,
oh man, yeah, it's the worst CBA of my lifetime, I think. But, yeah, we'll see. But anyway, congrats to the Pacers. Really strong season. I doubt they'll be back in the conference finals next year, but they'll could take some steps, though. I mean, I think the goal for them going into next year should be to make the second round, which I think they can do. I think they can win another playoff series.
They're built well.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's move on to the last piece, which we don't really have much slop. All of the fucking Sixers slop from this past week about their free agency stuff is just regurgitated bullshit over and over and over. It's literally Keith Pompey reporting the most obvious things. Yes, we know Paul George is their first plan. Yes, we know they want Brandon Ingram or Jimmy Butler as their backup plan. Yes, we know they're going to give him a max contract if it's possible. We understand these things. These are the things that we've known. We discussed on the Patreon episode this last week. We talked about all of those things. So if you want to go check those out, go subscribe to the Patreon and find them on there. But right now, the only thing that I want to talk about related to all of this news is Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat standoff once again, because they are leaking back and forth. It's a messy breakup once again. Mm-hmm. We are getting leaks in the media from the Heat side, from Jimmy's camp, basically saying he wants that max contract. I actually thought that at a certain point that Jimmy might just be like, whatever, I like living in Miami. It's fine. But no, Jimmy's back on his bullshit, and honestly, rightfully so. He should get as much money as he can, especially from the cheap-ass Miami Heat. I totally support that, and I understand why he's doing it. But it is funny now that they're leaking back and forth, basically, that Anthony Chang from the Miami Herald reported today that it was Jimmy Butler. There were two mystery teams that would be willing to give him a max contract in addition to the Sixers, which we already knew. So first off, who do we think the mystery teams are? And do we believe that? Or is this do you think this is just leverage while they're trying to extract as much as they can from the Heat?
Well, I think it's definitely, you nailed it because you said Houston, which I definitely think is 100% true. It was two teams in addition to Philly, though?
So it was Philly and then two mystery teams.
Okay.
So that's how it was reported.
Okay, two mystery teams. Wow. I guess Detroit. I always assume it's Detroit at that point, but I don't think
they have a new GM. I think I think that certain teams know that they're not set up to take Jimmy Butler in. I think that the Sixers know because they have a history with him and because Joel has a relationship with him and because Morey's been chasing him his whole career, and they're also would be contenders if they got Jimmy. And I think that the Rockets are ready to take that next step. They want to compete. Udoka's a psycho. Him and Jimmy probably fucking love each other. And they're in the position that the Pacers were in a few months ago, where the Pacers have so many. I think they even have better prospects than the Pacers had. They might not have that one Halliburton surefire guy. Şengün might be that, but right now they have 5 or 6 guys that could really pop, and they're in a position to trade a bunch of prospects or picks for a star player. And Jimmy would be kind of right in line with the kind of guy that they would like to add. I'm not sure how I feel about the Şengün fit there, but I do think that he would be just a guy that would help them get back to the playoffs next year, and they could still keep a decent amount of their assets to make other moves if they wanted to.
The thing is that Jimmy's max is so big. it must be like a sign and trade or something like that is what the thing is, because the only teams that actually have the cap space to sign, like projected cap space to sign Jimmy Butler this offseason, are Detroit and Philly. Like,
well, just to take him into the space there, he's under contract.
Oh, right. I keep forgetting that he's got one more year. So
yeah. Technically, I think he has 2 more years, and I think he would have to pick up that last year and then extend off that.
Okay.
But because of the age 38 rule, I think his max can only be 3 years, because he's going to be 38 in that 4th year. And remember Chris Paul ran into this, where Chris Paul couldn't get that last year because he was 38. LeBron ran into this. Chris Paul ran into this. At a certain point, you can't max guys. And I think the reason that they did this in the CBA is because they don't want teams overpaying a guy who's like 33 just to get him and then reward him for those last few years. Like, owners don't want to get in a situation where they're paying guys for past performance, is what I'm getting at here. So Jimmy really can only get a 3-year max, if I remember correctly. So yeah, he would have to decline this player option actually, and then he could extend for 2 years, 113 million off of that. So he'd basically get a little over 50 million a year for 3 years. Which, like, I don't know. Like, I mean,
do we think Orlando would do that?
I just don't think he fits. Like, they're built around 2 wings who don't really shoot. Like, I mean, they might become shooters, but like,
yeah, I don't think the team fit is good, because like there's places that Jimmy actually is a pretty good team fit, like Utah, for example. But like, I don't think Jimmy Butler is signing in Utah, like, so I don't know. Like, Toronto,
Sixers, Rockets, and this is SH is fucking screaming in the comments, so I have to bring this up.
Yeah.
The Warriors were one that it is an interesting idea, but my thing with the Warriors, and I've been continuing to say this, is that they're not going to spend the money again. Like, Steph makes over 50 million a year. Jimmy would make over 50 million a year. Like, it's hard to build a team with the new CBA, and 2, I think that they're more likely to go in the direction of, let's do Steph and younger, cheaper guys than bringing in a third or second max guy. And it's even hard to make that work, like, financially.
Well, it's also hard to make it work for Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler is not going to a team where he's not the best player. Come on. We know this about Jimmy Butler.
Well, if he went to the Rockets, he would be the best player, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, those are the if he went to the Magic, he would be the best player. So at least until Paolo got a little.
I was going to say maybe for like a year.
Yeah. So it's I don't know. Who do you think the other team is? I genuinely can't think of another team.
I mean, the Clippers are just always in it because of Ballmer. I think the fact that they are open. So for example, if the Clippers lose Paul George, for like, the Sixers sign Paul George using their cap space, they don't have enough is the problem, or is the issue. Is like, they could send Terrence Mann,
Norm Powell,
and maybe they could work out a sign and trade with the Sixers to make that money work. And then I think they have 1 first left, but like, Miami's not going to take that for Jimmy. Like,
no.
I just don't see a scenario where they have enough. So even if they're maybe the team that's willing to offer him that, I don't know if they are the team that has enough trade value. Really, like I said, like, I think that the only teams that actually make sense for him from a financial perspective and from the ability to acquire him are the Sixers and the Rockets. Like, those are the only 2 teams. I'm actually out on it entirely, almost, for Jimmy Butler. And here's why. Everyone's going to say, oh my God, you don't want to bring Jimmy back? No, if Jimmy Butler was a free agent, I would say go sign him. No brainer. Even if it's Paul George versus Jimmy Butler, I would say go sign Jimmy Butler. The issue that I continue to bring up and will continue to bring up is that Daryl Morey has done this time and time again, where he overpays to get a star. And he'll go, we'll give you 3 first-round picks for Jimmy Butler, and then we'll sign him to this massive contract. No fucking problem. And then he turns around and he goes, oh, the rest of the team is minimum guys. And then you have a situation where Jimmy Butler plays 50 games next year. Joel Embiid plays 55 games. The Sixers fall into the play-in. Yeah. And we are all like, man, we probably should have had better depth. Now, I do have the numbers here, actually, officially, for Aaron in the Uniball Discord figure this out. If they were to trade for Jimmy Butler, they would have $18.6 million in cap space. If they were to sign Paul George, they would have 17.9 in cap space. I just think that if they are able to use that remaining cap space to sign the problem is there's like no guys in this free agency class. Like if you offered KCP $18 million a year, Denver would just match that. If you offered Malik Monk, the Kings would just match that. Like there aren't guys that in this free agency class that you can sign with that remaining 18 million that aren't just like, you know, nice role players. Like maybe you could sign like Najee Marshall for $8 million a year. You could sign whoever. But I just think that if you're going to use all of that cap space on a guy, getting Paul George for free versus giving up 2 or 3 first round picks for Jimmy Butler, when you have a GM who has kind of cheaped out in the past with assets and isn't really willing to push the chips in, you would have 5 first round picks if you traded for Paul George to trade. Like if you got Paul George, you could literally just turn around and use 3 of those first round picks. Instead of using them to trade for Jimmy Butler, you could turn around and use them to trade for the high level role players we talk about that are on good contracts. Caruso, Avdia, fucking Dorian Finney-Smith, whoever it is. Like, and I just don't think there's a way he would do both with the Jimmy Butler thing. He's not exhausting all of his draft capital to build this team. And the free agents, in my opinion, just aren't good enough to give, or there aren't, you can't lure them away from their teams for $18 million a year to get that fourth guy that really fits perfectly. But yeah, this is why Jimmy is the backup plan. This is why Jimmy isn't the number one option.
So Jimmy is going to be on the Miami Heat next year.
He might get stuck there.
But probably without an extension. If I had to guess, I bet he doesn't get extended, and I bet he's stuck playing for the Heat next year, and he's just cranky the whole time he's there. So.
That's the thing is like, do you really want to risk that? Like burning a bridge with Jimmy Butler and then being like, let's run it back? Because his value, as we've seen before, it doesn't go up in these situations. It goes down. Like, say what you will about the Sixers making that trade and then letting him walk. They only gave up Robert Covington and Dario Saric to do it.
Yeah, that's true.
And I know that it's a different climate with star trades now, but like if Jimmy goes back and is miserable and the team sucks and they try to trade him at the deadline, I just think it's a big mistake.
Yes, but like, here's the thing though. Like, I don't know if Jimmy's necessarily going to have, because the weird thing about Jimmy is he, like you said, he like automatically right off the bat doesn't just fit on like 15 teams. You know what I'm saying? You're already starting with he has to play in LA or New York or, like he's not going to play in Utah. He's probably not going to play in Oklahoma City, even though that like might be a fit for him. So, you're stuck calling up Tibbs and saying, hey, can we get, 2 first round picks and Josh Hart, or something like that. And are you willing to do that? Because I think the Heat kind of have a chance. We got to look at what they're not bad without Jimmy.
I actually was surprised how decent they are. Like their record is like around 500 when Jimmy doesn't play. And by the way, they kind of already manufactured some consent here by saying at the press conference, we want guys who play all the time. And like, I think that basically we've talked about this a lot in the Discord, like Spo will just cook up some devil magic and get them back to being a top 10 defense again next year. And they'll be back in the play-in. Like they won't be as good in the playoffs. I don't think they'll be as good in the playoffs if they lose Jimmy, but I also think that they could just figure out a way to be competitive enough to hang around. And then if you trade Jimmy right now, you could get probably 2 or 3 first round picks and then use that in another trade.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I think that you trading Jimmy, if you trade Jimmy for like other things that like fit around them, people are going to say that they need the offense, like they have Terry Rozier and Tyler Hero, like which are in the regular season, I think can keep you afloat. You have Bam to anchor your defense. You've got Jovic and Hawkes, who I think are Hawkes to a lesser extent. I think Jovic is on an upward trajectory. You're going to have another pretty good first round pick this year, and they've done a pretty good job of using those type of picks. So if they can get another player who's got positive trade value, kind of like how Jaime Hawkes had positive trade value his rookie year, they will absolutely be able to trade like later on down the line. Like if Donovan Mitchell is cranky, It's not sounding like Donovan Mitchell is going to be traded like long term, but if he's cranky in a year or two, if Giannis for whatever reason becomes available, like there's options for them down the road to quickly get back to being like a top of the East legitimate threat. I would not let Jimmy Butler, I wouldn't sandbag. I think an expensive old Jimmy Butler who plays 40 games a year is going to hurt you a lot more than taking a little bit of dip in trade value for not extending him for 1 year. I think it's way, way, way more damaging if Jimmy goes off the cliff next year, only plays 20 games, and then you're stuck with this giant contract you can't trade.
This is what I was trying to say is like, I actually think that the risk profile for either Paul George or Jimmy Butler is actually pretty high just because their age and injury concerns and stuff like that. The thing with Jimmy is that if you're Miami, like there's a world where you might get to next offseason and Jimmy actually has no trade value, or he could just decline his player option and walk. Like they're not in an advantageous position to be like fucking around is what I'm trying to get at. Miami has been, and I've said this before, I think they're a little bit of SPO merchants when it comes to the fact that they've drafted well. I'll give them credit for that. But otherwise, like their decisions that they've made over the last few years have been so baffling to me. They didn't go all in when they had Jimmy because they wanted to try to save up their picks to get a third star. Damian Lillard became available and they cheaped out and didn't trade for that third star. And then they went and they traded for Terry Rozier to save money, which really was kind of the whole cover on that Kyle Lowry for Terry Rozier and a first round pick. But like, if you want to trade for a younger star, if you want to acquire star talent, these guys don't hit free agency anymore. And you need to have draft capital to trade to acquire these players. So like, I just think that they're in a potential fuck around and find out position again, where if they just blow this and Jimmy has no trade value later, or they can't get anything back for him, then they're playing a very dangerous game is what I'm trying to get at. Now, maybe eventually they could find their way to cap space and get off some of these contracts and salvage their way that way. But like, I just kind of think that they've been kind of there hasn't been any sort of like strategic like 2-3 year plan. It's all just random moves in one direction or the other, and I think it's going to eventually catch up to them if they keep just kind of kicking the can down the road here.
Yeah, I mean that's true. I mean, I think the Tyler Hero contract was bad. I think the misstep was not trading Tyler Hero when he was still on his rookie deal. And that would have taken a little bit of balls, but now you're stuck with this contract where like Tyler Hero doesn't really have value like that, like on that $30 million contract.
That's probably what they figured was we'll sign Tyler Hero to this contract. He'll be a neutral value guy, maybe a slight positive, and then we can trade him for a star. And that didn't happen and it backfired. And now you're in a position where if you don't, I don't want to say it's even selling high, because selling high would have been trading Jimmy Butler last year, but they would have never done that after they made the NBA Finals.
No.
But if you don't, this is not sell high. This is sell possibly the last chance to sell on Jimmy Butler and get the value back to kind of like, you just keep getting a little bit too high on your own supply and thinking you can always, bro, a star hasn't gone there since 2019. It's been 5 fucking years. And like, they've had a lot of success, undeniably. They were, even when they got to the finals, they had no chance to win those finals because they just like, if they were a little bit more aggressive in acquiring some of these like higher end star talent guys, I think they would have had a puncher's chance in any of those series. And they just kind of sat on their hands for most of the Jimmy era. And now they're they're potentially screwing themselves again here.
Counterpoint is it's kind of good that they didn't get aggressive last season, that they told Joe Cronin no.
I don't agree. I think that Damian Lillard would have been much happier in Miami. I think he would have been a much better fit for what they need. And I think Spo would have cooked up some devil magic and made it so that they were a much more competitive. Like, we would have just had Celtics Heat in the ECF again. Like, I really do think that would have been the case. I know that it sounds insane to say that now because of how he played with the Bucks. I think it was a weird fit. And I think that even with that, the Bucks were still a really good team. I just think that, and I also think that like if you, I just disagree with the idea that you shouldn't try to push in the chips when you have a top 10, top 15 player like Jimmy. Like if you have a guy who performs as well as he does in the playoffs and you can acquire another star that fits well with your other two guys, you should just do it.
Okay. Hear me out. Okay. Challenge trade. Okay. Jimmy Butler for Damian Lillard.
Oh my God. God, that would be the grossest basketball ever played in fucking Milwaukee.
So people might be telling me, so Sam, are the Heat going to start 3 guards in Terry Rozier, Tyler Hero, and Damian Lillard? Yes. Spo's greatest challenge to date. Trying to kill Bam.
Doc Rivers, Jimmy Butler. Oh my God. Giannis. Oh man, this is gross. Sign me up.
Two halfback dive style. The Bucks would shoot 78 free throws a game.
They're running the triple option.
Yeah, yeah. Run pass option. The Tim Tebow offense.
So all right, last thing before we get out of here. Just a minor piece of slop. I don't know if you saw this, but I had to bring it up. As previously reported on Hoops Hype following the lottery, there's a belief around the league that DeMar DeRozan will ultimately re-sign with the Bulls, given the team's continued desire to compete his role in Chicago's. Hold on, I'm not. This isn't even it. Desire to compete his role in Chicago's willingness to pay him. However, one team worth monitoring as a potential suitor for DeMar DeRozan via sign and trade is the Los Angeles Clippers. Should the franchise fail to re-sign Paul George in free agency, Hoop Pipes has learned.
That's so gross, man.
You don't like it?
Harden and DeRozan on the same team?
Harden, DeRozan, and Kawhi. I do just want to point this out. I know that this might also be the case for Joel Embiid moving forward, so I need to be careful here. But when Kawhi is your best player, it's really hard to team build. This is why I think, and I know Woj said today that they really want to bring back Harden and Paul George. So I think they're just going to cave eventually and give Paul George whatever money he wants.
Yeah.
But this is why it's really hard to build a team around Kawhi. Kawhi, you never know if he's going to be available in the regular season. You don't know if he's going to be available in the playoffs. He was way more available in the regular season this year than he has been in past years. And in the playoffs, he still was not available. But the reason why they think they have to go out and get DeMar DeRozan or Paul George, keep him, is because if Kawhi misses 30 games, in the West, you can't fall into the play-in. You need to have a fake number one at a minimum. And in this case, even if the fit isn't clean or great, I don't like it at all. Like if they're fully healthy, I don't really understand it, to be completely honest with you. DeMar's like 34, 35. But at the same time, like I just kind of think that it's almost impossible to build a contender with Kawhi without having like 2 other guys that can carry the load while he's out for as much as he is.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. And I think, I mean, yes, all of this stuff, but here's the other thing though. Like there's a reason that Kawhi Leonard and DeMar DeRozan were like kind of traded for each other. And then you also add James Harden into that equation in this hypothetical where like Paul George just left. That is some real 3 alphas shit. Like that is a throwback to that old Bulls team that had like Jimmy, Rondo, and Dwayne Wade on it. Like
it's gross.
Yeah. Like I that would be, they would almost guarantee that I would like pick them to like not even make the play-in. I would pick the Warriors ahead of them to make the play-in at that point.
So I'm looking at the Clippers contracts right now because I'm trying to figure out the thing about Paul George walking, if Paul George does walk, which doesn't seem likely, but if he does walk, I do think that there is a scenario where that gets them under the second apron because they lose him for nothing. And that does give them a little bit more flexibility in terms of the moves that they can make around that. So I guess in this scenario, it would be like Norm Powell, Bones Highland, and do you give up a pick for DeMar in that scenario? That adds up to like 24, 25 million in salary. You can do sign and trades if you're under that second apron. So you can acquire DeMar, pay him like 25 million a year, give up Bones and Norm. Norm would be pretty much redundant. Norm's better off the ball and he's a good shooter or whatever. But if you don't really need Norm if you're bringing in Demar, I suppose. And Bones is just a throw-in. Like, he's just to make the money work, and because Bones is a prospect, I guess the Bulls can sell them all subs on. I honestly would consider doing that if I'm the Bulls, because I'm just like, what are we doing? I'm just like, what? We're gonna bring back DeMar DeRozan another year of just, and like,
the Bulls are low-key the most depressing situation in the NBA. Like they're like there's all these teams that are like in hell, like the Bucks and the Lakers and the Clippers and the Suns. Those teams at least have good players. Like the Bulls have like Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and Patrick Williams. And like their best player, I think you can make an argument their best player is Caruso.
DeMar's still their best player, but Caruso, in terms of like, if you put him on any team, yeah, it's Caruso.
Yeah.
It's like Kobe or DeMar in terms of like what the Bulls need.
What are they doing to my beautiful Kevin?
So, all right. So here is an insane thing that I realized.
Yeah.
Kev was on one of the streams recently, and we were talking about how much dead salary that the Bulls had this past season.
Mm-hmm.
Zach LaVine, how much money does Zach LaVine make? Like
60,
he makes 42 million, I think. He makes 42.
Is it? I thought it was more than that.
Pretty sure he makes like 42.
No, you're right. It's 40. It was about 40.
So he makes 40.
Mm-hmm.
Lonzo makes like 20.
Yeah. So there's 60 right there.
Okay, there's 60. Vucevic was basically dead salary this past season.
So that's 78.
78. Okay. And how much does Patrick Williams make, who missed a bunch of the end of the season?
9.8. So that's that'll get us to $87 million.
Like $87 million in near dead salary.
That's over half their payroll, by the way.
And then all right, let me spin this a little bit positive. I still think they should trade Alex Caruso, because Alex Caruso is going to have crazy trade value across the league, and you're not going to pay him in a year anyway. Maybe if you're set on paying him, sure. This is the one sliver of hope that the Bulls have.
Dalen Terry, breakout here.
Not Dalen Terry. Never been a Dalen Terry guy. Go back to 2022 draft night when I laughed when they drafted him. I was very drunk and mean. He's not quite. I mean, he's nothing. But so I just want to point out here, they have the 11th pick in this draft, which is a good zone to be in my opinion, in this draft.
Yeah,
because I think a lot of teams are going to make mistakes up top, and you'll be able to just sit back and see who falls to you. So they have the 11th pick. They have IO. I don't think they're going to be able to take advantage of the IO contract. They do have Kobe White on a very good contract. 11 million. Caruso, they're not going to be able to take advantage of that in time because he only has 1 year left. But they might be able to re-sign him on a reasonable deal if he runs it back. And
trade him. We're going to be able to get value.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But the best thing that they have going for them, in my opinion, is the fact that even if they bring back DeMar, even if they try to be competitive next year, it doesn't matter. They're not going to be good enough to make the playoffs. They're going to be back in the zone that they were in this year at best case scenario. Probably even worse. They'll probably be one of the 10 worst teams in the NBA next year. And if that is the case, they have potential to keep together look, they don't have a ton of talent, but they have enough good players that if you eventually are just hanging in this zone of the 5 to 12 pick, eventually you might hit on one of those picks, and whether it's this year or next year or whenever, you might eventually just get to the point where you can add in a real legit star young player to that core, and you have a nice veteran core already built around them. Now, that doesn't involve Vucevic, in my opinion, but by the time that comes around, Vucevic is probably already gone. Like, the only positive you could talk yourself into is like Kobe keeps getting better, Patrick Williams keeps getting better, you get value for Caruso, Io keeps getting better, and in a few years from now, you might have a scenario where like you have all of those guys on decent deals and one or two of these young guys pop, and then you have a fun young core with some upside. Like that's the best case scenario, I think, for them. I think continuing to run it back with DeMar and Vucevic and all them is just, it makes no sense to me. I don't even think it's just from like a tanking perspective. I think it's just from like, let's see what we have in these other guys' perspective. Like let Kobe White cook for a season and see if he can become an all-star.
I think they've got to pull the plug and just juice this. I don't even know if it's worth a holding pattern. Like, you could get real value for Kobe White's under contract for 2 more years. I think next year is the year to trade him. He's coming off, maybe even this offseason, he's coming off a great year. You could get a lot of positive value. I think, for the love of God, you did not sign DeMar DeRozan. I think that you try to tough out
the Lonzo and Levine contract.
Yeah, you let Levine come back and hope that Levine can kind of play himself into being tradable whenever he comes back, maybe at the trade deadline this year. But I think guys like DeSumno, Caruso, these guys are, even Javon Carter, like he's only on a $6 million contract. Like, you have good contracts that are going to be valuable. And as we have always said, a lot of teams think they're good for whatever reason, or like,
including the Bulls,
which is why they need to fucking pull the plug, because you can get a real fucking benefit from trading out of. We just did this with another team. Who was it? The Kings. Like, this same thing. They're in the same situation where you're just outside. You're the play-in losers. You don't even make the playoffs. You're in that 10 seed. You're in these low picks. Just juice this roster. Like, the Bulls don't even have Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox to kind of tent post. You have Zach LaVine, who's always injured, and the fan base all thinks he's faking the injuries because he hates them.
Forcing elective surgeries so he doesn't have to play.
DeMar DeRozan, who's 34 years old, who is my fucking age, and and Lonzo, who like literally can't play, and Vucevic, who is also my age, is 33. So like,
there's nothing wrong with being in your mid 30s.
It's bad in the NBA. It's the prime age for podcasting. That's the best age to be a podcaster, but bad in the NBA. So they just should get positive value for all of these guys. Resign Patrick Williams, see what you have in them, but start again. Like, who fucking cares? Next year is a good get in the fucking mix for flag. You already conveyed your pick, so.
Or Chicago Bulls legend, the son of Chicago Bulls legend Carlos Boozer.
Yeah, sure. I'm just saying, like, next year's draft is going to be a lot better. Like, don't Washington Wizards this like they did in the Wemby draft. You know what I'm saying? You want to be like in this. You want to be in the Cooper Flag thing or Cam Boozer draft. Like, now is a good time for you to fucking suck. So don't do this. I'm begging you. They will do this. They will absolutely do this.
Well, the thing is that it's going to happen to them anyway. This is just getting ahead of it. That's my thing, is that I think that they are almost, unless they get lucky with one of these picks, which could always happen, sure, but that can't really be your plan.
Yeah, you need like Dalen Terry or
Dalen Terry's nothing.
Or Bateem or Julian Phillips to fucking pop.
Julian Phillips has got a chance. I mean, I'm not like a big Julian Phillips guy, but like he's very athletic and at least had like some statistical indicators that he's got a shot. And he's young still, I think. But I mean, they need to draft Zach Edey at number 11. Let's go. That's
what I'm hearing, folks. Make Vooch expendable.
He will save the franchise. Edey staying in the Midwest will save the franchise. Build around Edey. This is my thing that I was talking about on the podcast I did yesterday with Asher. I was like, the reason why you could really talk yourself into drafting Edey in this lottery is because you go, all right, we draft Edey, and if he sucks, if Edey's terrible a year or two from now, you could still, like, the Bulls are still going to be bad next year, or at worst case scenario, they're mid, and they're in the same spot that they're in, and they're going to get another crack at it. Like, it's a bet on, hey, let's just take this guy, see what he has, and then we'll spend a year or two maybe sucking with trying to make him work. And if it doesn't work, hey, we can always just get another shot at it next year or the following year. Like, there's no pathway for the Chicago Bulls to make the playoffs next year. They don't have one.
It's not happening.
No, everyone in the
zero.
East is everyone in the East except for that was in the playoffs this year, except for Miami, is going to be better next year, right? Like,
and I think there's a chance, even if Jimmy's gone, I still think there's a chance Miami is good because Jimmy didn't play that many fucking games for them.
And Miami just
they'll
beat
have
them the second.
They'll have Rozier for a full year. Like
they beat them for the second straight year in the play-in. Like you're not, and honestly, there are teams that are outside of the playoffs in the East that have a chance to make a leap. Like Atlanta could make a leap back up next year if they make the right moves this offseason to nail the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah.
I mean, we just saw what Lively did for the Mavericks. Like you're telling me that if Sar comes in and he's really good right away, that he doesn't gel with Trey next year and they can really like make a leap and like maybe they get off some of the shitty contracts they have. Like there are teams like below them that could pass them.
Yeah. I mean, yes, but I just don't think that there is any chance that the Bulls, they don't have a Luka. You know what I'm saying? They don't even have the top end talent. Like at any, like even a good Zach LaVine, even the best case scenario of Zach LaVine is not doing it.
No, it's a fringe all-star. I mean, and also I do just want to point out here that it is kind of brutal for the teams that did make the playoffs this year though, because like the Hornets are still in full rebuild mode. The Wizards are in full rebuild mode. And then it's like the Raptors and the Nets and the Bulls who are all just in that, and the Hawks who are all in that like need to get lucky space, basically. Need to nail this offseason / get lucky in order to be in that mix next year or have some upward mobility. But at least with the Raptors, you could be like, maybe Scotty Barnes can become something more. And if I'm looking down and maybe with the number 1 pick, the Hawks can have some more upward mobility.
The Bulls don't have a player.
The Nets and the Bulls are the two that I'm just like, you have nothing unless you make major moves.
But who, like, I guess Caruso, I was going to say, like, but like, they don't even have a player who's got the value of Nick Claxton, who I know is a free agent, but like, he's probably going to end up going back there.
Well, it's like, Caruso and Kobe probably do, but I mean, Claxton wouldn't even be. I mean, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson.
Oh yeah, there we go.
It's like Mikal can get you a lot. I mean, I think the Rockets would offer most of their picks back for Mikal, and that in itself is.
All these teams should fucking sell. I'm sorry, this season was like the first relatively normal NBA season pretty much since COVID, I think. Like, I think there was still some weirdness in some of these other series. Like, there was a wake-up call here.
What about last year?
I guess last year was fine, too.
You're just trying to fucking make the Celtics title seem more legit, and the other one's Mickey. Okay.
Well, I mean, the Heat made it to the finals out of the 8th seed. Like, come on. I'm just saying.
But that wasn't due to COVID. That was literally COVID.
No, but it was weird. It was a weird fucking thing to happen. Like, and I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, I agree. Them making it to the finals for the second time in 4 seasons was weird.
It was weird. It was an 8 seed. They lost it. They won 1 playoff game this year. Anyway, my point here largely is that I think that all of these teams. It's a lot harder if you're the Jazz or the Bulls or the Nets or any of these teams to say, we could be competitive. Like, no, get your shit together. Trade Lauri Markkanen, trade Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson, trade Kobe White. Like get fucking real. Like, grow up. Like, be normal. Okay.
I do just want to point out here.
Yeah.
The Jazz also, you're right. The Jazz have also thrown their hat into the ring of trying to trade their picks to be more competitive around Lauri Markkanen was the report.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I almost think that if I were a team that were like the Washington Wizards, I would be like, okay, so we can get basically top picks in this draft for fucking nothing. Like, here's Kyle Kuzma.
Here's one Kispert. Like, good luck. Yeah.
This is what I'm saying is like, I almost think the market inefficiency might just be getting high picks in this draft because no one wants their picks and just giving up mid-role players for them and just being like, fuck it, one of these guys might hit. Like, who knows? Like, yeah, maybe they all suck, but also it's like, we're not doing anything anyway.
I like a lot of guys in this draft. Like, to be honest,
Sure.
like
Sure.
honestly, the top tier of guys, like, there's nobody like I'm insanely out on besides like maybe Rob, but like I think or like Sar if he goes to.
Maybe I don't know Rob.
I'm a little out on Rob. He's so
Dare
small.
you?
He's so small. I'm just saying he's so small. Like
Guys with elite handles and touch don't fail very often. But I do have I have some concern about the upside for sure.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think he'll like fail, but I just like I think you end up with like Jordan Clarkson. You know what I'm saying? And like
maybe
how was that? You know, like so. But whereas I think the other guys have like more upside. Like I think even Reed has more upside than Rob. I'm gonna be honest. Like so, even though he's like a safe.
I have Rob one pick ahead of Reed, but I think it's because I think that there's a chance that Rob is just the outlier small guard who actually can do it.
So. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong because that would be a lot of fun. We need another. Since Isaiah Thomas, we haven't had our. I
mean, Jalen Brunson. I know Jalen Brunson's like bigger.
Beefy.
Yeah. But like, look, Darius Garland made an all-star team. You know, all these guys are different players and they all have different shapes and sizes, but smaller guards still pop every once in a while. Maxey, there's a lot of guys. They're not quite as small as Rob. Trey, but Trey's probably the only one that Trey is really the only one of this whole group that has really popped. That is his size, yeah. But I'm still in on Rob just because there's a slight chance, and I'm all about swinging for star upside in this draft, which is why my top 4 right now is Sar, Holland, Topic, and Dillingham. Yeah, that's my first tier.
I think I have Rob at like a little lower at like 6. You know what I'm saying? The shooting is great. Yeah, like don't get me wrong, but like
pull up shooting, pick and roll, good playmaker. Everything works. If he were 2 inches taller and 30 pounds heavier, he would be the number 1 pick in this draft. But that's a very big difference. Like that. Those things are the difference between a guy being like a nice bench guard and an all-star potentially. Like so.
What if Malik Monk were even smaller?
Maybe that might be his fate. Yeah. But
which, by the way, that's a good player.
Sure,
that's a good player. Like
I'm taking the swing though. I'm taking the swing. I'm willing to miss. I'm okay with missing.
I hope I'm wrong because Rob's a fun player. Rob's probably the most fun player in this draft. So
lot of fun. I'm really interested. I would not trade my pick if I were in this draft because there's no fucking value in these trades. Who are you getting unless it's a throw into a trade?
Yeah, who cares? Just fucking pull the trade. You know, maybe one of these guys is good. Who cares? Like
a few of them will. History tells us that like a handful of these guys turned out to be really good, and then everyone panicked over nothing.
It'd be really funny if this was like a fucking elite. Like if this was like the 2007 draft.
Well, the last time we had expectations of a draft not being good, and then it turned out to be really good was 2020.
Was that the Ant?
So that was Ant, Halliburton, LaMelo, Maxey, McDaniels, Bane draft.
It's pretty good.
And going into that draft, the only 2 that everyone from that group thought had potential to be stars, were high level like impact role players, were Ant and LaMelo. Really, those were like the 2 guys that like that's the difference between this draft and that draft. Is that draft had Ant and LaMelo, this draft doesn't.
Yeah.
And Wiseman at the time people thought was
right, but
it was pretty obvious pretty fast that was not the case.
Everyone could have told you that. I feel like I don't, there's so many interesting, like I think this draft honestly could end up being kind of on par with was it 2018 was Luka's draft, like the 2018 draft minus Luka might be this draft's destiny. Like if Luka wasn't in the
2018 draft's like one of the greatest drafts of all time.
What? It was Ayton, Bagley.
At the top it wasn't great, but it was like Luka, SGA. All in the lottery was Luka, SGA, Trey, Jaren Jackson Jr.
Oh yeah,
Mikal Bridges, Michael Porter Jr.
That's how I think that. Yeah, I'm standing by that now. So
I was like,
gonna be like.
I think that's the best draft of the last 10. Easily the best draft of the last 10. Probably the best draft post 2. I'm gonna make a bold claim that makes everyone cry and shit their pants.
Okay.
It's better than was 2004 the LeBron draft? It's better than the LeBron draft. 2003? Yeah. It's better than the LeBron draft because outside of that top 5, that draft fucking sucks. The 5th best player from that draft is David West. And if you're to go on 2018, you go 2018 had Luka, SGA, both MVP candidates. Yeah. Jalen Brunson, all NBA this year. Mikal Bridges, Jaren Jackson Jr. won Defensive Player of the Year last year. Michael Porter Jr. was a key player on a championship team. If you go down there's 10 guys from that draft that are either fringe all-star, all defense, high impact role players on winning teams. The strength of the top of the 2003 draft is unbeatable with LeBron and Wade, but the depth of the 2018 draft is it's not even fucking close. There's we've talked about this before. There's 30 good players in that draft. It's probably the deepest draft of all time, and it had multiple MVP candidates in it, which is unheard of for a draft.
Yeah, I think this draft's going to be like that one.
Yeah, just like it.
I'm standing by it. I've said it now.
The top five had Trey, Luka, and Jaren Jackson Jr. in it, even with the 2 top picks being kind of a mess. Even Ayton was good at one point.
I'm doubling down. I think that this is a good draft. I think this is an above average draft. I think we're gonna have some stars here.
I'm trying to think what would be the most average draft. I honestly think that the most average draft is still a good draft, but an average one would be I guess 2017.
How about
that had or 2016?
Which one? That was the Jaylen Brown draft, right?
That was Jaylen Brown, Jamal. It's all really good second and third options and flawed number 1 options. Yeah, so Sabonis, Siakam, Ben Simmons, Jaylen Brown, Brandon Ingram. That actually has a lot of good depth, but it doesn't have a number 1 guy that is on a really good team, which most drafts have at least one of those guys.
Yeah. I
should say most drafts have one of those guys. A good draft has one of those guys.
It also had Brogdon, DeJounte Murray.
The depth of that draft in terms of B tier stars, C tier stars is incredible.
There's even some guys who have hung around the league, Karis LeVert, Malik Beasley.
Jared Allen in that draft? No, it's 2017 Jared Allen.
Yeah. So Jakob Poeltl, Buddy Hield, Torian Prince.
Yeah.
So a lot of guys like that. I think the 2010 NBA draft is a pretty good middle of the road draft too.
No, that draft's not good. That draft stinks.
But Paul George, John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, Gordon Hayward. I think that's a pretty average draft.
We did the tier ranking, and that was lower on ours.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe the average draft is better than I think it is.
Yes, it is. That's why it drives me insane when people are like, there are no bad drafts. I'm like, yes, there are. If there are no bad drafts, then why do we do any of this? Like 2015, even if it has Devin Booker, Kristaps Porzingis, and Karl-Anthony Towns in it, it's a bad draft. By the time you get to pick 12 in a redraft, you're drafting fringe rotation players.
2011 was pretty brutal. It was Kawhi.
No, it wasn't. No, that's
Kawhi and Jimmy.
Kawhi, Jimmy, Kyrie, Klay Thompson.
Yep.
Okay. After that, it does get a little bit harder, but
Kemba.
But Kemba made 4 All-Star teams.
Right.
Isaiah Thomas was top 3 in MVP.
I forgot about Isaiah.
2 All-Star teams.
I forgot Isaiah Thomas was technically in that draft, barely in that draft.
But Kawhi was the best player on the championship team. Jimmy was the best player on 2 finals teams.
But everyone else in that draft is not a rotation player. Alec Burks is after Vucevic, it's Alec Burks is the 7th best player in that draft.
There's a difference between depth of a draft and star power, and if a draft has 7 stars in it that made an all-star team and were legit ones, you could even throw Vucevic out. That was kind of whatever. The center position sucked. There were 6 guys that made legit all-star teams in that draft. And 2 of them were legit number 1 options in Jimmy Butler and Kawhi Leonard. And Klay Thompson's one of the most important players on a dynasty. Kyrie's one of the greatest second options we've ever seen to stars. So like, that's a pretty good fucking draft. Like,
that's a great star power draft, but like,
you only care about role players. I get it.
I kind of do. Like do you know the rest of the lottery outside besides those guys? Derek Williams, Enes Kanter, Tristan Thompson, Jonas Valanciunas is by far the next best guy. Jan Vesely, Biz Biyombo, Brandon Knight, Jameer Fredette.
But didn't you just make the same argument that 2010 isn't a bad draft when if you were to do a redraft, Eric Bledsoe's the last guy that you could get with like the 6th pick that's like somewhat decent? This is the thing.
Yeah, I got
like, I only know this because I am like obsessed with looking back at these old draft classes now, where I'm like, yeah, I kind of don't. And like, look, I mean, how many Hall of Famers are going to come out of 2010? 1.
Yeah.
How many are coming out of 2011? 5?
5.
4?
Yeah, probably 5. Yeah.
Jimmy, Kawhi, Klay, and Kyrie are locks. And Kemba won't make it, but that's 4. 4 Hall of Famers in one draft. Even if some of that is like Klay got drafted to the perfect situation and was a perfect third guy for that team, still pretty great.
2012 was pretty bad too. You had Anthony Davis, and then
that draft. Bradley Beal is like the second best guy, right?
Well, Dame. And
Dame.
Sure. Then Bradley Beal, but then you get Andre. No, okay.
Draymond was in that.
Draymond, yes. Draymond and Chris Middleton are
3 Hall of Famers.
Yeah. So
and if Middleton gets another championship, maybe 4 Hall of Famers.
Yeah. So and then you have Andre Drummond as the next one, but then you have, I mean, listen to the rest of this lottery though. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, Dion Waiters was 4th, Thomas Robinson was 5th, Harrison Barnes is like the next best player in the draft at 7th, Terrence Ross at 8. Austin Rivers 10, Myers Leonard 11, Jeremy Lamb 12, Kendall Marshall 13, John Henson 14.
I'm aware that the picks at the time aren't great, but if you do a redraft and you say how much talent was in this draft, that's kind of what I care about more when I'm judging the quality of a draft.
But again, it's the same thing where it's like you get past pick 7 though, like you're taking Harrison Barnes 7th. I genuinely don't know who's 8th. Like it might be Miles Plumlee.
But even in like outside of like
it's Jay Crowder. Sorry, it's Jay Crowder.
But even in 2018, outside of that year, which has like the greatest depth I've ever seen in any draft class ever, where like if you do a redraft and you're like at the end of the lottery and you're drafting like Mitchell Robinson, you're like, fuck, this is still pretty good. Like,
yeah, I guess that's true.
Like outside of that class, that's the majority of draft class are like kind of shitty after the first like 6 or 7 guys, which is why all of this is like most drafts have 15 guys that are NBA players. And the hard part is figuring all that out. And that's why we talk about it so obsessively for so long and why people think this draft class sucks. But on average, they all turn out to be somewhat similar with some really weak ones and some really strong ones.
Yeah. All right. I got to go re-listen to our episode so I can argue about this.
Come back next episode. We'll argue about it.
You ready to argue? Yeah.
All right. Thank you for
Trill and I, next episode, we're going to talk about team building, folks. Team building. You heard this? Trill's favorite subject. We're going to talk about is it worth it to tank? Next.
Let's go. Episode. Let's go. You don't want to miss that one. It's a lot of twists and turns in that.
Trill loves it. Every time we start arguing about this in the group DM, Trill like just fuck, shut the fuck up. Let's go.
All right, sign up for the Patreon. Bye.
Yeah, peace.